Hey guys, Mike here with Trustless Collectibles.
And I'm Randall, aka Shizukatz.
And I'm Simu Samuel, also known as Chairman.
And this is going to be the final deck discussion video for Slime Volume 2, featuring a very familiar deck, the level 1 Shizu from set 1, alongside empty empty gate. So basically, the deck would just be level 1 Shizu combo as what people would normally refer to as. The deck, no, it was the go-to build for Slime Volume 1. It's what made Slime Volume 1 to be considered one of the more competitive builds. But it did have a few weaknesses. In particular, its level 0 line was never particularly great. You had your options of maybe a 2k runner in yellow or a 4-5 if it's alone on the stage, but these options aren't necessarily the greatest. Everything is now fixed with the release of Slime Volume 2. Slime Volume 2 introduced a plethora of amazing level 0 card choices that really bolsters the consistency and the level 0 power of the deck. So we're just going to be taking a look at one list today. Fairly traditional Shizu combo list with post set 2 cards, and then we'll be taking a look at all the cards, what they do, and then giving you guys a rundown of the playstyle and the pros and cons of the deck.
Alright, so taking a look at the defining pieces of the deck, the ones that you're always going to see in your Shizu builds. We have, of course, the 4 copies of the Shizu level 1 combo herself. She has a Climax combo with the Pants Climax that on attack, you mill 2, add up the levels, and then salvage a Demon Continent character whose level is equal or lower than the sum. This gives you a pretty nice source of free mill, as well as some semi-selective advantage from your waiting room. Some supporting casts to go with her include the 0-0 Chloe, which searches for the 1-1 Mask event, the 1-1 Mask itself, and the 3-2 Shizu early play. So one central theme of this deck involves memory compression through both the 1-0 combo and the mask. When the mask is used, you get to search your deck for up to 1 Demon Continent character and then send the mask event to memory. And then when the 1-0 combo is reversed, you reveal the top card of your deck, and then if that card is a Demon Continent character or a copy of the mask event, the Shizu sends herself to memory. This allows you to build up a lot of memory compression and is ultimately one of the themes of this build of the deck. The 3-2 Shizu early play has a early play condition where you can bring her out at level 2 if you have 2 or more copies of the Shizu level 1 in memory already. So this is definitely one of the main goals of the deck and something that you should be looking to do every game as soon as possible in order to set up for your mid to late game.
Yeah, so as you can see that this deck does not run a secondary Climax combo and does not actually run much in terms of finishers. That's because the end goal of this deck is not to have a strong one-turn finisher, maybe like the 8-choice deck. No, this deck is just trying to heal every single turn and not die, and eventually your opponent will die first. So this is a very defensively based deck. This strategy is sometimes known as dirtling, but basically you're playing solitaire, you're going through the same motions every turn, you're recycling your healers, you're recycling your advantage engine, you're canceling, you're brainstorming, and your opponent just watches as they fail to kill you, and eventually they will die to a million swings that you do over the course of many, many turns.
Yeah, so it's basically kind of almost like a critical mass kind of deck where you accumulate this free compression through memory, and then you just kind of accumulate your resources, get your clean stock, get compressed, and then once you hit just like this critical mass, you just become like unable to die.
Yeah, like if you guys have seen some of the gameplay from even when this set was in its first set, there becomes a very clear point when the deck is so compressed and they're doing such efficient plays with early heals that you'll see games finished where the slime player is still mid-level 2. Very, very common thing. They get a critical mass of 6, 7 memory. They just double, triple cancel every turn. and then they also just heal twice every turn, and then even through your opponent's finishing level 3s, you're still nowhere within lethal range, and then they just burn out the resources, and then they just collapse, and then take vanilla swings and lose. So that's really the strong point of this deck, and that's kind of why this deck doesn't really play any finishers, and why most people choose to play just an empty set of Gate Climaxes. The Gate Climax actually does have a corresponding Climax combo attached to it in terms of the set 1 Milim. It's a level 3 healer, and then it does have a Climax combo at the end of that card's attack. You can pay 5 and discard 3 Demon Content characters. If you do, burn 2 and restand. Now, a lot of people do like to play this card as a one-of, just to have the option of having some explosive finisher if the situation arises. But I do think most of us in our team agree that that card is not worth running, especially when you do have a card like the double Rare Milim from the first set, where she has the potential to just do 2 extra instances of damage by herself for less resources, and also doesn't need a Climax combo attached to it. Right, the Milim on play reveal top. If it's a reveal top card of your deck, if it's a Demon Continent trait, get the character, you burn 1, and then when she reverses a character in battle, you can pay 3, pay 3, and then you can ascend that reverse character to clock. And she also does get quite a big boost to power whenever one of your other characters attacks. She gets 1000 power. So the empty red gates here are kind of just here to increase consistency, right? In this deck, the goal is to just maintain as many healers as possible, maintain good resources count. If you think you're going to need to mill your following turn, you might salvage a Fukuzero Rimuru or a Ramris to be able to get into a Fukuzero Rimuru, or maybe you want to salvage a Chloe so you can search your deck for a mask next turn. Or you just maybe just want to pick up more healers in terms of the Xion or the Shizu, or just a counter. The gate is just a very flexible, grab anything you want from your waiting room. Now, there is something else that is possible with the advent of Slime 2, which is you can play Choice Climax instead of a Gate Climax. Now, the Choice Climax, in comparison, Choice, when you trigger it, you can choose a character with a soul trigger and either add it to your stock or add it back to your hand. So in comparison to the red gate, where you can salvage any character, the choice only allows you to salvage a character with trigger, but you also get the extra stock. And this particular build of Slime is a deck that is very stock hungry. So if you think that you do want a second trigger that gives you more stock, you might want to consider playing Choice as well.
So to recap, the pros of this deck, again, so very under-interactive gameplay. You're just playing solitaire, you're playing with your deck. You don't really care about what your opponent's doing. You have a very straightforward game plan. Involves maintaining your compression, your resources. And again, once you hit that critical mass, then you basically get to outlive your opponent. There are some weaknesses of the deck in regards to some of the conditions that the deck requires. Importantly, the Shizu does require 2 of the 1-0 Shizu in memory to have her early play condition. So if your opponent has a way to kind of hard deny that, some decks can do that better than others. And so that is something that needs to be covered by other cards that you're running, which we'll get to in a moment. And also, again, not having a strong end-game strategy. Again, as Mike mentioned, there are options you can run, but they come at the cost of your resources that you are using to keep yourself alive. And generally speaking, your resources are better used in a more efficient manner just to stay alive. When we're comparing the Milim finisher, it just pales in comparison to the new Rimuru finisher from Slime Volume 2. So if you want to play something stronger in terms of finishing power, it might be better to look at a different deck. The way this deck is built, all of the resources are going to staying alive. It's very hard to divert resources elsewhere and maintain the same level of power and maintain that critical mass.
Okay, so now moving on to a sample deck list. So you guys will be seeing a deck list that we put together on screen. And so some of the new options in Slime Volume 2 definitely bolster the level 0 line for this archetype of deck. So we do have, of course, the new level 0 Milim Chaser, as well as a new Shizu level 0 Double R. She has a Shimakai effect where on attack, you can choose one of your other Demon Continent characters and boost it for 500 power times the number of your other Demon Continent characters, allowing her to potentially buff another character for up to 2,000 power. However, her other ability, when she's reversed, you can pay 1 and then put her back to rest, and then at the start of your next Encore step, she sends herself to memory. So this contributes to the earlier mentioned memory compression game plan, allowing you to get even more memory while simultaneously giving you additional plussing options at level 0, being able to save herself and get another attack in, while also allowing her to use her buffing effect multiple times across multiple turns. So definitely a very strong card that helps contribute to the deck's core game plan while simultaneously just being strong in its own right. Some other level 0s that we run as the supporting cast include the Fukujiro Rimuru, giving you some extra sources of mill. This is also a very good synergistic card with the level 1 Ramrus, which is a card that we'll get to soon, in that by bringing it out, you can have access to extra mill if you need to get through some extra cards in your deck, because the level 1 Shizu combo has to mill exactly 2, and you might want to have some selective amount of mill in order to get through the rest of your deck. We also run a couple of the Shuna Brainstorms, and of course we can't have a slime deck without our level 0 Milim stock swap. And lastly, a couple utility cards. We have the Trial Deck Rimuru, allowing us to filter through our hand, get extra climaxes out of our hand, and also grab the specific cards that we want from our waiting room.
Moving on to the level 1 line, we have the 4 level 1 Shizus, the backbone of our deck, the why our deck is so good at compression. We play 2 copies in this list of the level 1 Ramrus, also from set 1. She has the very simple but very powerful effect of on play. You can pay 1 stock, and then you can summon any cost 0 or lower character from your waiting room straight onto the stage. And then at the end of your turn, if that card is still on the board, that card goes to memory. Now, this card has extremely strong synergy with the level 1 Shizu. Because let's say, for example, your level 1 Shizu, when she gets reversed initially, you reveal a climax and she doesn't actually get to go to memory, which is a very big problem. But with the Ramrus, you can guarantee that if she stays on the board at the end of the turn through the summoning effect, she will 100% be going to memory. Some other cards we play in this list, we have a couple of attendance check Rimurus alongside creating potions Rimurus. The attendance check is just a simple when you activate an act ability, so that's brainstorming or counters. He gets the following effect: when he reverses a character in battle, you get to blind stock 1 card. And then the potions Rimuru has several different effects. His first effect is you can rest himself as a startup to choose 1 character from waiting room and then put it underneath him as a marker. His second effect is you can rest himself again if you have a marker, and then send that marker underneath him to your stock. So kind of like a 2-turn stock generation tool. And then his third effect is you can once again rest him, and then you get to also pay 2 to heal 1. So this is just another card that will basically be forever in your back row. Every turn you're going to tap it for some effect, whether that's putting a card underneath him as a marker, moving that marker to your stock to get 1 free stock, or just pay to heal, contributing to the overall game plan of just healing as much as possible. And then when he's not healing, when you don't have enough healing, when you don't have enough stock, you can generate more stock. And then to round it off, we have a couple, we have 4 of the 1/1 Mask event that is spawnable with the level 0 Chloe. Very simple effect. Search your deck for a Demon Content character, and then add it to your hand, and it goes to memory. The 3 cards we have going into memory in this deck, it would be the level 1 Shizu, the Mask, and then the level 0 Shizu Double Rare, alongside any other targets that you summon and successfully send to memory with the level 1 Ramrus. So you guys can see the potential of the memory compression in this build. Very easy, 5, 6, 7, and then sometimes you do have some high roll games where you just have maybe like 10 memory. But in general, the critical mass is around 6 to 7 when you will start noticing that you're going to be double or triple canceling almost every turn.
Yeah, so the addition of the new double rare Shizu actually adds more cards that naturally get sent to memory, which even makes that original game plan even better. So it's actually a straight improvement from just the set 1 deck alone. At level 2, we are running, in addition to the 4 Shizu early plays, 3 Xion early plays. So Xion early play is the early play of choice because it costs, or it heals the stock, which regenerates 1 stock for the player. You would run this over the Shuna early play, which doesn't give you back a stock, so that you can early play for as little stock as possible. A combination of Xion and Shizu is online for only 3 stock. You get 2 heals, and you can just loop whichever one you have the condition for or is available for you as much as possible. In addition, when talking about the Xion early play, she is yellow, and yellow sources in this deck are a little bit few. So if color is required, the Brainstorm actually can be switched over to the new Rimuru Brainstorm from Volume 2, which is a yellow search Brainstorm. However, that does give you access to a different part of your deck, a search instead of a salvage. So that is something to be aware of, but it is an option in case one desires more yellow in their deck. Rounding off our level 2 game, we are running 1 copy of the 2/1 Shizu back row. This card is a fantastic support for all our early plays, gives it raw 2000 power, as well as a draw ditch effect that can be activated every turn. This activation every turn can also proc the attendance check Rimuru, as well as just give you nice filter for any extra climaxes you're drawing, or helps you draw into other cards. We are also running 1/2/1 memory counter. Now, generally speaking, counters don't have that much of a value in this deck, because instead of wanting to keep our board alive necessarily, we actually want to get the cards again so that we can play them to heal again, and recycle their on-play effects. Also, the Shizu has hand encore by herself, so even if she does get reversed, it is okay to just dish a card and she remains on the field. However, memory counter is still very useful to stop interaction from our opponents. So if our opponent is trying to keep a board alive, let's say they're playing standby and they have a card that they want to keep on the board, we can use the memory counter to deny that. So it is still in this list for that matter, mostly to interact with our opponents rather than necessarily keeping our board alive.
Alright, so at the level 3 game, we really only have 2 cards that enter the fray, as all of the other cards in our level 3 line are early plays. And those 2 are the previously mentioned 3/2 Milim, which is a top check burner and clock kick, as well as 1 copy of 3/2 Gazelle. So Gazelle has 2 abilities on play. You look at up to 3 cards from the top of your deck, you can rearrange them in any order, put them back on top of your deck, and then you can choose one of your opponent's characters on stage and return it to hand. Additionally, he has a secondary effect where you can pay 1 and choose any of your Demon Continent characters, give it +1 soul until the end of the turn. So these 2 combinations of effects are actually very helpful for orchestrating specific endgames where you want to deal specific amounts of damage, as you not only have knowledge of the top 3 cards of your deck, but after looking at those top 3, you can assign soul as you please to characters on your board. It's also just very useful for his bounce ability, get rid of any pesky cards that might be on your opponent's board, whether they're just cards that are huge or cards that give assist to some other opponent's characters. Just a very versatile ability if you need to pick it up. Additionally, the card, because it top checks 3 and allows you to rearrange, also has very good synergy with the 3/2 Milim clock kick, as she does have that on-play top check burn. So the combination of the 2 can be very, very helpful in creating some lethal endgames. You can guarantee the top check burn, guarantee the amount of damage you're swinging for, guarantee the clock kick, and it could just be a very rough time for your opponent in the end game if you do manage to reach level 3. As we previously mentioned, sometimes this deck will just hit that critical mass and just win at level 2, but when you do hit level 3, you do have the option to go into this pretty potent endgame between these 2 cards.
Yeah, and that about sums it up for this particular deck list, though there are some different options, and I think Simu definitely wants to show us off about some of the options.
Actually, I do. There's an option that I think many people might find missing from this list. It is the inclusion of a level 0 Riki. This list notably does not run any Rikis at all. And that's primarily because we have Chloe and Mask to help get our level 1 combo, so we don't need to index into the Rikis. However, with you could consider playing the on reverse Riki if you would like to have additional mill in this deck. This deck does suffer a little bit from lack of mill options. As previously mentioned by Mike, the level 1 combo mills 2, which sometimes is enough, but sometimes isn't. And so additional mill sources is, it's something that could be experimented with or played around. It doesn't quite lack the mill as like A choice does. Like A choice actually just has no mill, whereas this has a decent amount of mill. But generally speaking, the Riki effect is not required because we have the mask. So if anybody's wondering where are the Rikis, that's why there are no Rikis.
Yeah. You're also going to be seeing some other choices in terms of actually for example, the level 2 counter. There are quite a number of very reasonable counters to play in this deck. Like Simo mentioned, counters might not necessarily be your top priority in this deck, just because the level 3 early play, Shizu does have hand on court, but if you do want some sort of damage mitigation, for example, you do have the trial deck counter from the counter from the trial deck, which when you play it, reveal top card of your deck. If it's a demon content character, add this card, which allows you to go one card further to try to cancel more swings. Also have a guild counter from the first set if you really want to play that total control of the board game and you don't want to let your opponent reverse any of your characters. Sometimes this deck does run into some hand issues, but if you do run the guild counter, his effect is when you use that counter, you can actually pay one and then salvage that same counter back to your hand. So you can have just one card in your hand, and as long as you have the stock for it, you can counter as many times as you want. Now, one final thing that is worth mentioning, we did bring up the fact that this list plays empty gate, and some lists play empty choice. Now, doesn't necessarily have to be empty. Now, we already talked about how the minimum level 3 isn't necessarily worth playing, but Randall does have a take on the choice trigger where you actually play a Climax combo. So Randall, why don't you talk a bit about that build?
Sure. So I think the first thing to note, if I'm gonna talk about this build, is that I feel like most people are going to assume that the choice combo that I chose to play is the level 3 Rimuru that we featured in our 8 choice deck, because this deck does already have level 1 combos lacking a finisher, and so Rimuru at just first glance would seem like the obvious choice to include here. However, the Rimuru does have some conflict with this deck in that when you mill 2 for its Climax combo, you do have to mill 2 cards that are either Demon Continent characters or yellow Climaxes. And because we run Mask events and blue Pants Climaxes, that could potentially be a problem, especially because you have to pay the cost before you even mill 2. So you could potentially pay 3, discard a card, send him into memory, and then do nothing. But what my Pants Choice build does is actually a double level 1 build. And so the idea for this deck actually came from how I previously used to play these Shizu builds when it was just set 1. So my personal playstyle is I like to level 1 combo over and over and over and over again. These guys both know that I love my level 1 combos and I love spamming them. But the thing is that when your Shizus go to memory, turns out you can't use them anymore. So the idea that I had was running Shizu combo level 1, as well as the Shion combo level 1, which is also from Slime Volume 2. And the idea is that after a round of Shizu combos, your Climaxes basically don't do anything if you draw them. So I basically wanted to give myself a way to still utilize my Climaxes in some way, even after all my Shizus, or like a bunch of my Shizus, have gone to memory. And so I decided to go with a double level 1 line running 4 of the Shizu and 2 copies of the Shion. So the idea is that this not only gives me more options after my Shizus have gone to memory, but it also gives me an alternative in case I do not actually draw the Pants Climax for the Shizu combo. I do have ways to toolbox for whichever combo I need through using the 1/1 Mask event or the 1/0 Ramrus based on whichever Climax I do end up drawing. And it also gives me additional plans for when I draw multiple climaxes, like let's say I draw a Pants Climax and a Choice, then I know I have the option to go from Shizu combos on the current turn into Xion combos on the next turn. So that just does also open the option to run the Choice Climaxes, obviously, and allow me to potentially get stock with triggering those climaxes instead of just getting hand through the gates. So I think it's a pretty fun deck. You guys will have my list up on your screen right now if you guys want some sort of inspiration onto what sort of build I'm getting into. But yeah, that is a build that I'm trying out right now.
Yeah, one of the things that I personally do like about the double level 1 combo that Randall's had is that you guys have seen a lot of videos for the first set slime deck on our YouTube channel already. We feature it very prominently, but there have been several games where the player doesn't draw the level 1 Shizu combo, and then they kind of just don't have anything to do. Playing a second level 1 Climax combo in this deck actually does let you be kind of less susceptible, right? Because like you do have the level 0 Chloe into the level 1 Mask, which basically allows you to search for anything in your deck. And generally speaking, you do want to kind of push for climaxes every turn, try to push the damage economy, and then if you do have the Xion combo up, it does feel significantly less bad than compared to just kind of playing a climax just for playing a climax. In the original build, the gate is also red, and you might not necessarily have red at level 1, whereas the choice build, you do have yellow as one of your secondary colors at level 1 anyways, because you want to play level 1 Ramrus, so then yellow is going to be a pretty natural fit.
Yeah, another thing with this build, you guys probably noticed that I am running Rikis in this build. We did previously mention Rikis earlier in when we were listing some alternative options. I do think that the Riki Rimuru is actually more important in this build than in just a standard just single level 1 combo list, because you want to have the ability to flex into either of the combos that you search for, and then just kind of go hard into getting lots and lots of level 1s, because this deck will frequently be doing back-to-back level 1 turns. So like it's not enough to just have like the copies of level 1s for that first turn at level 1. You do want to have the flexibility to go into multiple turns back-to-back, and I think that's part of why I chose to run Rikis, as well as what we already run for selectivity going to level 1, which are the Masks and the Rammers.
One last thing to mention about going for a choice climax as your secondary climax is to keep watch the soul trigger count. The reason why gate is universally more applicable is because you just need a character in the winning room. However, with the choice, you do need a character with a soul trigger, and generally speaking, this deck is running a lot of characters that, or a lot of cards that don't have soul triggers, including events, a lot of level 1s. So do keep that in mind. Maybe you need to play around with the soul trigger count, add more counters, or level 2, level 3 options. But that is definitely something to consider when playing with choice.
Yeah. So, pros and cons of every choice, as with every single deck building option in Weiss. If you want the selectivity of the gate, then empty gate is probably your best choice. But if you want to have the potential of generating more stock, maybe you want to try out choice combo, choice climax. And then if you're playing choice climax, do you want to play empty choice? Or maybe do you want to try running some copies of the level 1 Xion? Definitely give things a try and see what you like. But in general, this deck was pretty strong in set 1, remains very strong, honestly got a lot stronger, patched up its biggest weakness, which is the level 0 game, and still retains its insane rate of very efficient compression. Going to level 2 very easy heals with easy conditions, as well as supplemental stock generation and extra healing through your level 1 Rimurus. And overall, just a very solid deck, no matter what kind of matchup you are going into. The deck is very non-interactive in that sense. You don't need to reverse anything. You don't really rely on your opponent's board being any sort of way. As long as your early play Shizus can comfortably attack and survive, then your level 2 game is going to be pretty smooth sailing from there. But that does round out our video for the level 1 Shizu build. We've gone over the 3 most popular and most competitive builds now for Slime Volume 2, 8 Standby, 8 Choice, and the level 1 Shizu build. Every deck has its pros and cons, and it's really up to you in terms of what you want to play, what you expect to play against, and your playstyle in terms of what build you want to try. I know personally I am very excited for the set. I'm going to be playing heavily all 3 builds. Slime, I've already been playing the Shizu combo from level 1 quite a bit. I'm definitely going to play that deck more because honestly that deck is very up my alley. But at the same time, I'm really having a ton of fun with the 8 Standby build as well. And then obviously 8 Choice is nothing to scoff at. The level 3 remove finisher is very, very potent. I've seen so many people die from just like mid-level 2 with the level 3 Miramu. But it's really crazy, don't you guys think, that like just one expansion just gave so many different, completely unique decks that are all very competitively viable, right? Because normally we have a deck that's just universally thought of to be like the best, but Slime has 3 different ones, right? I think that's just quite crazy.
I think what I think is really funny is that like one of the decks comes from like the first set and was almost unchanged, and then you have these 2 newcomers that just come onto the scene, and then you still have that first deck that is still doing very, very strong. And it just goes to show like how much you can do with one set when just the card pool is this strong. And honestly, yeah, Slime Volume 2 and combined with the first set, just the overall strength of the card pool is just way up there.
What I really like about these 3 different decks is how different they are in playstyle and how it really caters to different types of players, right? We have the ultimate defensive deck, which is the Shizu level 1 deck, or where you just try to compress, you play for your deck compression, play that defensive game, have no finisher, and you go to the other extreme with this 8 Choice deck where literally all you care about is the finisher. It like rides or dies on this finisher. And then you have this 8 Standby deck, which is kind of like, it has a finisher, but it's also very board based, board presence heavy, which is something that I guess the level 1 Shizu deck does care a lot about board, but only at level 2. But this Standby deck hits level board. Starting even level 0 with the Milim Chaser, you're already dominating, winning board, and that just never stops, right? So it's like these 3 very different, unique decks. There's something for everybody. Maybe you want to play, like, there's something that, everybody can play a deck that fits them the best, and I think that's something that not very many sets get to have, and it's something really cool about, I guess, Slime after Volume 2 is that there's just something for everybody.
Exactly. And that is just so awesome. You guys will definitely be seeing some gameplay videos featuring all the Slime variants that we talked about in these videos. Definitely check that out in the future. But until then, this has been Mike with Dressless Collectibles alongside Randall and Simu. We will see you guys definitely in the next one.